You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
This is TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network, a weekly audio safari that features the newest in paranormal discoveries while highlighting the latest and not to be missed TruthFunder.com projects. For truth seekers and true believers, this week's TruthFunders starts now.
Greetings, bonjour, hola, welcome, and hello. This is the TruthFunders live radio show here on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb. I am your host for this weekly look at TruthFunders.com and everything that is the paranormal, metaphysical, universal, and essentially good. It is about the light here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am joined, as always, by the CEO and founder of the phenomenally brilliant website, TruthFunders.com. His name is Mark Schwartz. And Mark, I am so much more with it this week that I could get out a full sentence without screwing it up.
You're so clear. It's like a whole different person I'm talking to tonight.
Drugs, man. Stay off drugs, kids. If you want a lesson in not taking drugs, just go listen to last week's show.
Well, for anyone who missed last week's show, Art was he had a root canal, and so he came onto the show literally like after having surgery. And I don't know how he did it. He made it through the show. It was a little bit of a. I don't remember. Any of it, you don't. You should go back and listen to it.
Are you kidding me? There's no way I'm going to ever do that. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist.
It was a little bit of a train wreck, I'll admit, but that's the fun. That's the fun part of live radio, and I thought it was pretty exciting. I didn't know what was going to happen or what you were going to say, so I'm really glad that you're back.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, our poor guest. I mean, I couldn't even tell you who the guest was, honestly, man. I was so out of it, and I feel bad for saying that, but that is the honest to God truth. Is I have no recollection. I was so high on painkillers. I mean, it was awesome.
Oh man, well, it was Eli Donnelly, and you better remember because we're going to be on his show.
No, that's right. We talked about we talked about the thing that I'm interested in. Oh, God, hold on. Let me see if I can bring it back up here. Okay,
you can do it.
I was interested in it, and I was like, I want to talk about that. Hollow Earth. It was Hollow Earth. I remember.
It was Hollow Earth. Very good, Art.
888-919-2355 is the telephone number here at TruthFunders Radio. 888-919-2355. We're here on IRN, and it is great to be back and feeling like myself again. And thank God that happened this week. No disrespect to Eli, but we have a phenomenal show lined up for you tonight, and I would not have wanted to screw this one up. As a matter of fact, this show is going to be a two-part episode. We're going to be joined by the guests that we have on for this episode again next week because there's so much to cover with them. There's so much content. There's such a breadth of history there that there's no way in hell we're going to get it done in 90 minutes. So we're going to have to take an extended 3 hours to get this one done.
And it is going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. And something I wanted to bring up that you talked about last week, Art, was you were talking about angel numbers. And maybe, right. Do you remember that?
I was high, and I was looking at something, and I literally, I saw an angel number sequence pop up in front of me, and I totally just side railed you and said, hey, angel numbers, let's talk about that. Because that's what you do when you're high.
It was a total side rail, but it got me looking. So many years ago in college, well, not that long ago, I suppose, I found this book in the bookstore, and it was by an author named Alan Vaughn. And I don't know if you've heard of him, but he wrote this book called Patterns of Prophecy. And Art, I've
heard of that book. I was supposed to read that. Somebody recommended that book to me, and I was supposed to pick it up and read it, and I never did. And I probably should, because now you're the second person to tell me that.
It is. You know what? I'm going to send it to you. It's actually an autographed copy that I picked up, and I had no idea what I was looking at or what I was interested in. You know when you start getting into the paranormal, and you don't really know much about it yet, but you know that there's more out there than meets the eye, and so you start to pick up little things here and there. Well, this is one of the books that I picked up, and I never really, I think I started looking at it, but I never really picked it up. And I am amazed, thanks to you and your angel numbers. I picked this up. I just want to quote this to you real quick if I can. You're going to love this, and I'm going to send it to you in the mail, and you're going to get.
You're going to snail mail this thing to me? I want that tracking number. I want the tracking number so I can watch it.
All right, so check this out. Patterns of prophecy. From the beginning of man, there have been men and women who have attempted to see into the future. Some have attempted with little success to predict through reason and knowledge of the past. And amazingly, a few individuals have successfully prophesied from mystical insights. The ability of these individuals has far too long been clouded in superstition. Alan Vaughan, a prophet who predicted whose predictions concerning the Apollo missions, the Robert Kennedy assassination, and the Watergate scandal have received nationwide attention, attempts in patterns of prophecy to take some of the mystery out of the subject. Vaughan believes that each individual has an inner psychic blueprint. I love that, a psychic blueprint.
That is interesting.
Much like physical RNA DNA, blueprint and prophets have the ability to recognize and read these blueprints. He has synthesized the concepts of synchronicity, coincidence, archetypal roles, prophetic dreams, and psi fields to formulate a plausible explanation for the amazing phenomenon called prophecy. So this is right up your alley, and I have to send it to you.
Absolutely. No, yeah, please drop that sucker in the mail. I would love to read that. That would be super cool if you could do that.
He even talks about...
Where did you find this book again?
I found this in a bookstore in Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona. This just huge, random, old, used bookstore.
Are these sounds coming across, by the way, these weird dingle dangles that are happening on my computer? Is that coming out on the air? Sorry.
I'm
do a little
not
stage
hearing
production. Okay, cool.
I think we're good, hopefully.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so, and he also, going, full circle reference back to your dehabilitated state last week, he talks about how he went to an LSD ESP, conference.
Wow. I would love to go to that.
I know, you're really interested in all of that. So,
what year was this book written?
This book was written in copyright I think it's got to be the 70s or the 60s.
Okay, so it's not it didn't come out within the last 20 years.
No, yeah, it's old, and I'm really surprised I don't hear more about it because there's so much of this stuff that is we discuss this now, and it's I think in some ways Coast to Coast has brought the word synchronicity back out, and people use that word a lot.
Can we credit really Coast to Coast for synchronicity being something that is back in our vernacular as a society? I don't think so. I think synchronicity in itself is a synchronicity in that it has almost in a way energetically propelled itself back into the common language here that we're speaking. I don't think you can't credit anybody except for the word itself. I think it actually forced itself up and out as its own sort of synchronicity, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I completely agree. I think it sort of reemerged in pop culture, and that was one of the
right after 2012, by the way, too. Right after December 21st, 2012 was when that word started really popping again. I noticed because everything that happened around that time, I took particular attention to sit down and be aware of it and remember it and take notice because I knew things were happening. I mean, something clearly happened in that one moment. What that was up for debate, obviously, but whatever happened, there was a shift and certain things started taking place. And one of them was that word just it was just thrown around so much more and ever increasingly. It's exponential. I mean, we hear it everywhere now.
Yeah, we do. And this book was published in 1973, and they talk about synchronicity. And one of the great things is this was used in college. I bought it in a college bookstore. So this book was taught in a class.
It's autographed by the author?
By the author, yeah.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
And it was taught in the class because I remember there was a whole bunch of them. So I find that really, really interesting. And the fact that they do use the word synchronicity so much in this book shows how far back that word actually goes. And no one can really take credit.
Much further than that, actually. But Alicia, my wife, she has a very deep knowledge of the whole concept and the word itself. Too bad she's not here because I would ask her. She would know the answer to that question.
I wonder if Alan Vaughan is still alive. I'll have to look into that. I love this.
Let's get him on the show.
The blueprint of life. I think that's so beautiful. I really love that word.
No, and this whole synchronicity angel numbers thing, I want this to be an ongoing topic on the show from week to week. And if that's something that you have thoughts that you would like to add to the conversation, I do encourage you to call in because this is a conversation that I want to continue having because I think it's important. 888-919-2355 is again the telephone number here at TruthFunders Radio.
And one last thing before we bring on our guests, I want to say that thank you to everyone over the past few weeks for sending your emails, for contacting us. We see the numbers. We know that there's thousands of you out there that are listening and participating.
I am so shocked. This is a conversation. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this was a conversation you and I were having on the phone before the show today, and we have high listening numbers. I mean, this is a brand new show, and for the amount of time that we've been on the air versus how many of you are tuning in, especially new listeners from week to week, we see a lot of growth in that as well. I'm not shocked, but I am surprised, and I do want to thank everyone as well. Mark is typically the one to do that, but we have just so much higher than I ever would have expected, and I wanted to say that.
Yeah, and that being said too, we come up with these really fun things to do each week, and one of the things that we've been doing is a weekly remote viewing session, where I hold something, and then I ask people to think about it we give them 10 seconds, they think about it, and then they go to Facebook and they write the answer of what it is they are remote viewing, because we're trying to get close, we're trying to see if there's someone out there, and it's a fun game. And the first 3 weeks that we did it, or 2 or 3 weeks we did it, we got a lot of response and people were really engaged. And last week we did it and there wasn't a lot of engagement. And so I think I'm going to take that off the air for a while, unless I hear from people that they really liked it and they enjoyed it. That you have to speak with your words, people. And there's a lot of you listening, so you can speak by calling in and saying that you like it, or you can participate when we do something. So let us know and be vocal and send us an email or shoot us a message on Facebook. If you like one of the things that we do. If they're going to shoot us an email,
what's the email address? Because you can't say send us an email and then not give them an email address to use, because they might
can't.
All right, give it to them.
TruthFunders@gmail.com. Let's just do it simple.
And that goes right to you. That doesn't go to like a bot or somebody else. That goes straight to Mark Schwartz, everybody.
That does. It does go straight to me. So who knows what I'm in for by giving out the full email, but I'm putting it out there because I want to hear what people have to say. Your involvement in the show is really important to us.
888-919-2355 again is the telephone number here at TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network. All right, usually you and I like to BS quite a bit, but like I said a minute ago, we got to get to our guests because we need all the time that we can possibly conjure up in order to properly give them the respect they deserve. I want to take a moment, actually, to give a proper introduction to our guests this evening. We have 2 people on, as a matter of fact. Their names are Chad and Alta. And they met and married in the early 90s in a little-known town. I mean, maybe a lot of people know about it. It's called Little Rock, Arkansas. The marriage was actually one of destiny, as Alta would say, and she'll say in a moment when we bring her on. It was arranged by the powers that be, and I know what that feeling is like because I have the exact same situation with my lady. What they did not know, though, at the time is that from the moment on, the couple would take part in a journey into the world of unknown and complete high strangeness. And that's why they join us here on TruthFunders. From aliens to ghosts to an ever-changing werewolf, from meeting people who have been seen and some unseen, this is a story for the open-minded. It's you fine listener. You listening to, look at you. You're listening to us right now. How nice of you. You're open-minded, I know. In 1995, Chad and Alta experienced their first UFO. A massive site in Hammond, Louisiana, and this experience opened their eyes and led them to the well-known French Quarter in New Orleans, where the high strangeness just continued. As they tried to take day by day to understand their place and purpose of these unusual events, they met a young lady, a coworker named Jacqueline. Little did Jacqueline know that this would be the most unusual bond of her entire life. In 1997, a night that would live with them until their last breath, Chad, Alta, and Jacqueline were taken from a street corner in the French Quarter. Alta calls this the night of missing time, where the 3 have shared their own individual extraterrestrial experiences. Everything from Chad's blue being encounter, Alta's blonde female interaction, and an implant found in her arm and 4-digit prints. Their story will absolutely take your breath away, and I cannot wait to get into it with them. The high strangeness continued when in 1999, Chad and Alta moved to New Mexico, which is, by the way, a hotbed for paranormal activity. And Chad went face-to-face with a black-eyed unknown being there. The couple moved quite frequently as they made their way into Denver, Colorado to find work and found themselves in the middle of the infamous Columbine High School massacre, which everybody remembers. In 2001, the couple found their way to Alabama, where Chad worked with his dad in the locomotive business. They stayed there, and to bring high strangeness into their own lives. The strange encounters just continue and continue and continue. And it might be that they're following, it's just following them around. The energy is just attached themselves to them and just runs with them. Chad and Alta encountered their second UFO in Alabama and discovered that one of the family members there has had a similar experience. So thank you so much, Chad and Alta, for joining us on TruthFunders Radio.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for this. It's such an honor for both of us.
It's a huge honor for us, honestly. You guys are, you guys are known. People know about you. You've been involved with this stuff for long enough that you are names in this world, and we are honored to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
What's going on, Mark? What are you doing? There seems to be a little bit of delay, so I guess we're just going to have to work with that. So thank you so much again for joining us. Where should we start? I mean, I want to talk about your guys' story, your history, and everything that's going to go into your TruthFunders project, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the program. But I want to know, I guess essentially, after everything I just recapped there, what would you say is the single most potent and concentrated memory of everything that has ever happened to you? What is the one that sticks out to both of you? I want to ask you individually. Sticks out to each of you as just like the single greatest moment, maybe not great, but just important moment in your paranormal lives.
Well, I'm sure it's our night of missing time is probably the most important, at least to me. When I was encountered by blue being, it was just very, spiritual.
And Chad, hey guys, I'm so sorry. I dropped out for a moment, and I'm back now. Yeah, I would love to. Gosh, there's so much here, and I think there's a lot of people out there that might not know the full length of your story, and we want to really just dive into it today. And we also want to give people some time to ask you guys some questions. And so I'm thinking if we could start at the very beginning. Let's say that I don't know anything about your journey and how you guys met. I mean, I personally do because I follow the story and I've been listening to interviews that you guys have been doing, and I find you so fascinating. And there's so many reasons why, because I think the energy that you carry with you is it's potent. It's infectious. In fact, when I was talking to Alta, when we first talked over this weekend, while we were talking, there was a bird that flew through the window in my room and just sat there sitting on my windowsill.
What is with you and animals, like coming in and giving you signs? That is a particular thing that happens to you alone. I don't know that happening to anyone else other than you. It's crazy.
I don't know. But it's something that I noticed right away. And I actually, while I was talking to Alta, I was trying to take a picture of the bird simultaneously with the phone because I wanted to send it to her. But that sort of energy seems to encompass both of you. So I would love to hear your story from the beginning. And if you could fill our minds and the listening audience with sort of set the scene for us of how it all began and how you two met and how this energy started.
And just very quickly to follow up with Mark's question too, I think one of the things that it's kind of a two-part question that I want to get into as well is what it is about your marriage and your relationship that leads you to say that it was made by the powers that be, the power, the universal energy that is greater than us. What is it about your relationship that makes that so clear to you?
Well, Chad's motioning for me to go ahead and begin, and as I usually do, because as they say, age before beauty, and I'm 10 years older than Chad. Born in the late 50s in the deserts of Arizona. So imagine back to somewhere between 1957, 58. I'm about 6 months old. My mom, who raised me predominantly alone in her life, had chose to leave my father and father's people and so on. And she says that while she was driving across the desert, and I'm not sure where she's speaking about, but she claims that I'm the only passenger in the car, and she says it's daylight, and her claim is that a small metallic craft, sometimes she would use that term, sometimes she would say UFO. She didn't speak of it very often because, of course, she had to pick and choose who she was talking to, and she didn't trust a lot of people, needless to say, with this kind of conversation. But she says that literally a craft came out of the sky and stopped her on the highway. Now, when she would mention this, I would cringe. It embarrassed me so badly, and it, I think, maybe frightened me also because I couldn't believe these words were coming out of my mom's mouth. I know that I never challenged anything that she said. I just tried to, remove myself from that, and I've never had an interest in the subject at all.
Can I ask you if she also was somebody that was into that sort of paranormal type subject matter, or if she was actually much less so, and someone that you would call a skeptic had something like that not happen to her otherwise?
Art, I'm so sorry because you're very muffled for us, and I only caught a part of what you said.
Well,
Chad and I are having a hard
we'll try and
time
fix that
hearing
here. One moment, we'll try and fix that here for you. What would you call your mother somebody that would tend to believe in extraterrestrials or the paranormal to begin with, or would she be a skeptic otherwise?
Again, not a subject that I ever really remember discussing with her. So what I do know that she would say throughout her life, my mom was a very accomplished woman, started college in 40, got a degree in law by 50. President Clinton at the time was Attorney General for the state of Arkansas, happened to be one of her law professors for a semester. Wow. So as I say, she was a self-made woman, very active in the community, that kind of individual, but seemed very open to, she loved science fiction. She'd always also indicated often that she would love to go into space. Again, these were subjects that I had no interest in, so there wasn't much dialogue about it between her and I. I don't know that she ever actively sought anything out, but again, a very open woman. She has a daughter who, again, kind of following up with what I said to you about when I'm 6 months old, if we could move me to around somewhere between 8 and 9, I think that's an appropriate, I believe somewhere between 8 years old and 9 years old. We lived in, this is when my stepfather was alive. She was married to my stepfather. We lived in Aurora, Colorado, and so happened to live across the street from a large military hospital called Fitzsimmons Hospital. My first memory, because I don't have any childhood memories prior to this event at all, my first memory was literally being tested in this hospital for ESP, what was called ESP. And so just stating that to you tells me that my mom always knew that there was something highly unusual about me. It wasn't something, again, that we talked about very often. That is my first memory. And then ultimately, as I said, I've never had an interest in any of this area whatsoever when it comes to anything science fiction or space, other than the beauty of the stars. But I mean, I literally avoided almost, I hate to, keep trying to explain what I can't explain, but I seem to have a void in me about that area.
So, Alta, do you remember at all any of the ESP tests that they were conducting on you, or is it a memory that you remember, or is it a memory that your mother may have told you that sort of was planted in there? Do you ever think about that, or?
I absolutely, it is acute. This memory is acute for me because, again, prior to this, it's as if I woke up at, somewhere between 8 and 9 years old. Prior to that, there is no memory. And there are also no childhood, in terms of baby pictures of me. I've never seen a photo of myself as a baby. My photos don't start until I'm 2.
Can you confirm that you ever actually were a baby, or did you come out at 2 years old?
I've always suggested possibly hatched, right? It's difficult because my mom has since crossed over, and she was really my only family member that I had contact with throughout my life. There were various times, but very brief, did I ever meet any other family members. So, but the memory is, as I said, acute, and it is me sitting in this hospital room, lab kind of environment, with adults wearing lab coats, all white and sterile, and I'm being tested with, I think, maybe called flashcards.
Oh, the Zener cards with the different symbols on them.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's very brief.
That's really interesting. Do you feel that deep down you are, and if this feels too personal, you don't have to answer it at all, but do you feel that you are more than human at points? Do you ever get that feeling? And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but
right. I don't know how to answer that, in all honesty. Sure. I've given almost maybe too much thought to it throughout my life. Just with such confusion, lots of mystery in my world that I can't get answers to. So ultimately, to keep it from it just being about me, because this certainly isn't, I seem to, as I said, started off life strange. Mom would call me strange, but, I didn't know if that was just because she was upset with me or whatever the case may be. My mom always seemed to be aware of the fact that I had these extra senses. She was always pleased with that also, I might add, but it was something that I felt extremely embarrassed about. I never saw myself as people might use the terms gifted or so on and so forth. I had a lot of problems with being me growing up.
Well, you obviously have very high intelligence, and you can just hear it with the way that you speak. And the first email when you reached out to us at TruthFunders, I could tell right away that, and I think it's what separates your and Chad's story, is your ability to articulate it so well, and the way you speak, it's very, very intelligent. So that's obvious to me, that you were a very bright child. I can definitely see that. When do you feel that you and Chad, or how did you and Chad come into the mix together? And if I'm skipping anything, please let me know and we can go back. But how is Chad involved with things? And how did you two meet?
Well, Chad's still acknowledging he'd like me to continue just for another moment, and I'll certainly, he speaks well for himself, and I love for Chad to share his take on all of this. But essentially in 1990, I'm 33 at the time, never married, no children, nor did I have any interest in either. It happened to be Valentine's Day, and this is going to sound like a strange romantic story, but essentially I had a new job in a medical field that I was not happy with at all. I was real uncomfortable in this new job setting, and I was on the verge of deciding to get out of it. And it so happened that about the time I'm ready to quit, this young guy that I worked with named David, as I said, Valentine's Day, he couldn't stand the thought that I didn't have a date. And he took it upon himself to try to arrange a blind date for me against my will. He makes a phone call right in front of me, and he's talking to this guy on the other end of the phone. And I could actually tell by the one-sided conversation that whoever he was speaking to seemed to be really interested in this date, but couldn't make the date because he had to work that evening. He worked in a restaurant. And so by the time this all got spoke about and David hangs up the phone, I'm real befuddled at this point because, you can't make me happy. I don't want a blind date, but it doesn't seem like I can get a blind date. So, here we go. And that didn't set my mood off very well anyway. So I'm in a real foul mood and kind of just seems like you can't please me. And so as it would stand, to try to speed the story up a little bit, there's no doubt to me. Now, there's a lot to the story, and it would take a lot of time to go into all the explanation, but there is absolutely no doubt to me, specifically, that Chad and I were arranged on Valentine's, 1990, by beings that presented themselves in human form, that were men. They appeared as men, but they were extremely handsome, almost too handsome. They looked like models, and sure. they made sure in a fairly large city. Little Rock at the time was several 100,000, so we're not talking a small farm town. There's just no doubt to me that they made sure that I would end up in a location. It happened to be a large sports bar that I had never been to before, but I end up in this location, and before Valentine's is over with, this young man walks up to me. I'm sitting alone at the bar. I'm in a really, really foul mood, and I just keep accenting that because my mood was so poor. I would have never walked up to me and spoke. But this guy walked up to me.
It's amazing, too, how when you're in that kind of a mood, it kind of exudes from you, and it's really hard to change that sort of a mood, and it also rubs off on people that you're around. That can really happen.
And extremely out of character for me, I might add also, because I'm generally a happy soul when it comes to being out in public around people, and have been very good throughout my life to try to keep my sour moods to myself, but not on this night. And so to me, that's important to the story as well, is because I was so out of character. And this young man walks up and essentially, you've targeted, Mark. I switched just like that. I mean, I went from this really foul mood to joyous, to be speaking to this guy. And he asked me to go play pinball, and I hate that game. I hate it. And, in the mood I was in, I started to be real ugly about it. But as soon as I saw his little face and his blue eyes and his big smile and so on, I changed instantly. And
hold on, Alta, why do you hate pinball? I've never met a person that hates pinball. I have to know the answer to that real quick.
No, there's got to be one in the world, and that's me.
There's like the lights and the sounds. The whole thing's just irritating to you. That's funny. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Maybe I got issues with lights and jingles and things. I'm not sure, but...
you probably don't like Las Vegas, I would assume, either, and the slot machines and the whole thing.
I don't. That's so interesting. You know us so well. I don't.
It must be an energy. It must be, look, and everything is energy, and there just must be certain frequencies that just turn you off, and Chad's understandably turned you on in such a way that it just shifted you.
Well, while we're playing pinball, we get around to names, and my name is Alta, and of course Chad, and he reminds me, he's like just in as much shock as I'm in, because it is Chad that David tried to arrange with that blind date earlier in the day, and Chad couldn't make the date because he was working. And so what's real crazy about the story, on top of everything, is that Chad came over to this sports bar with guys he worked with after they got done, with their evening duties at the restaurant, and he'd never been in this location before either. So this was the first time for both of us. Again, it's bizarre, deep down creepy in many ways to me, and quite beautiful, all in the same mix, because it was in no time we figured out we were the blind date that didn't happen that happened. Essentially, if I may then, just to move beyond that for time's sake, within 24 hours of meeting Chad, we discovered that Chad's grandfather, who had crossed over by the time I met Chad, Chad knew him as Papa, of course, and the world knew him as George. But Chad is reminded by his mother that his grandfather's birth name that happens to be on his tombstone is Alta, the same as mine.
Wow. And I want to pause you right there, because we need to take a quick break. We're actually a little bit behind. So you're listening to TruthFunders Radio here on the Inception Radio Network, where you're joined by Alta and Chad, talking about high strangeness and their just incredibly bizarre life. We have so much more to get into. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after these words.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free. You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
Listeners, this is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
You are listening to TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb. I'm joined by Mark Schwartz. We are on the phone, or on the line, I guess you would say, with Chad and Alta. And we had to interrupt Alta's story to get into our break, but I want to pick it right back up where we left off, and that was that Chad's grandfather was actually named Alta.
That's right. So the grandfather, we discovered his first name is Alta, and his last name is Duncan, and that happens to be my mom's last name.
Oh, wow. Talk about synchronicity. Jeez.
Yeah,
right.
and also synchronicity. And some people might think this is a bit strange. I was going to mention off air to Alta and Chad that my fiance, I'm getting married in May 30th, and my fiance, her father's name is Mark. And I'm Mark as well. So it's another strange name coincidence or synchronistic thing.
My grandfather and I had the same name ourselves. How's that for weird?
You're a junior, aren't you, Art?
No, I'm not a junior. It skipped a generation.
I'll still call you junior.
All right, fine. I'm not the interviewer here.
If I might add, my mother's father's name is Art, that I never had a chance to meet.
There you go. This is the ultimate
wow.
synchronicity moment here on TruthFunders Radio. That is pretty cool. And so did you guys learn all of this like on that particular evening when you were playing pinball, or are these just things that kind of started showing themselves and blossoming to you over the years as you went on?
Well, we literally learned the name game, if you will, within 24 hours of meeting. We, like I said, my mood changed instantly, and I just enjoyed being with Chad. And he's funny. He's very attentive, and all the things the girls like. Chad presents, and so I didn't want the evening to stop, and nor did he. And he invites me home, and
doesn't sound like it really ever did, honestly.
That's right. We were apart for 3 months because I ran.
She hid from me.
Yeah, I was scared.
You got scared.
Learned about I was. When I learned about the name, something triggered inside of me, and it just frightened me so bad.
I gotta wonder if that's exactly why you were so turned off to things when you were younger as well, is because there was just an underlying fear of not wanting to face it and deal with it because it was such a prevalent part of your personality. Very likely.
Again, I've given lots of thought to who I am and what's going on, and there's so much I have no answers for, but within that 24 hours of discovering the name connection, Chad had no idea. I guess I played a role of my life, and I had him convinced that we'd be seeing each other soon to follow, and another date and so on. And as he said, for 3 months I hid, where he couldn't find me because I was just too afraid. And so much of this I can't give you explanation for, just telling you the truth.
It's actually interesting. It's interesting also because I can relate with you in such a way that is so much the exact same with the relationship that I have with my wife, except for she hid from me for 12 years. So it was a little bit of an extended hiding, but I know exactly what you mean, and I can totally relate, as I'm sure there are others out there who experience it as well. But, because we are kind of short on time here, I kind of want to fast forward to your guys' first UFO experience in '95 and what exactly went down with that.
Perfect, because Chad has a wonderful voice, and he's about to pick it up with the '95 event. Go ahead.
Well, first off, I wanted to say, when Alta and I did hook up, one of the things that she did tell me is when she was little that she was told by spirit or whatever that, we would, she would never have children. We would never have children. And is that okay with me? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I was told that I will never mother my own, but I will mother many. So, with that said, with what she does and everything, it's kind of comes to, in the turn, the path. So anyway, in 1995, we moved to Hammond, Louisiana. We lived right outside of Hammond. We decided that we're going to go in town for dinner. It was still pretty light outside, early in the evening. We're driving, and to the right of us is this group of trees in this bend in the road. And back behind this group of trees is the local Walmart. So we get around this group of trees, and we look up, and there's this craft in the sky. And again, it's still pretty light outside. And this craft is huge. I mean, big. Mothership. It was bigger than the Walmart and the supersized Walmart and the parking lot combined. I mean,
how close were you to it?
I would say it was below cloud level. I mean, it was fairly low. That or it was just really big because, I mean, it seemed
to take up the sky.
Take up the sky, yes. It was just huge.
And was there anyone else around, or was it just you two in the parking lot?
No. Now we're driving on the road.
Okay.
We turned into the parking lot.
And there were others driving around us as well.
There were other people driving around. I did not see anybody, like pulling over or hysterical or.
Well, you know what's interesting, you guys, is that what sometimes I bring this up, but I saw in the middle of plain as day, I saw a strange object in the sky, and I was sitting in a Kinko's parking lot, trying to make some copies for work, and there was nobody around. There was one woman walking to her car, but nobody else. It's interesting. I really love to hear if other people are there and other people see it, or if other people are there and they don't see it, because I've heard it from both sides. Some people say everyone else around them has seen what they were seeing, and other people say that they were the only ones who were able to see this. So I wonder if it is an energy or frequency thing. Just a random thought, but please go ahead. Don't mean to interrupt the story.
No, that's fine. It was kind of a rectangle shape, that it wasn't as wide in the front part as it was in the back. It was fairly, I guess, smooth, or straight, on the bottom. There was 2 or 3 lights in the front, 3 or 4 lights in the back, moving so slow it was almost like, how could it stay in the sky float? No sound.
If I might add, my reaction, again, seems to be a theme with me, was I must have gone into some kind of insane shock, because I turned my head away from it instantly, looking at Chad, pleading with Chad silently to tell me that was not there. And Chad, of course, put his eyes back on the road, and then Chad...
Yeah, it was as if we both look at it. Alta looks at me, I look down at her, and we focused our attention back to the road and where we were going. Is as if to say, okay, if we don't pay attention to it, if we don't see it, it won't see us.
And how long were you two dating when this happened?
We met in 1990, we married in 1991, and this happened to us in 1995.
Okay.
So
before cell phones and photos, so obviously, just for the listening audience, I think these days everybody says, or they just assume that everybody has a camera, and and it's important to note that in 1995, unless you had a physical camera in your hand, you couldn't just whip out a camera and take a picture of something like that.
Thank you for that, because we've actually had an astrophysicist ask us, or somewhat accusingly, why we didn't take photos. And again, as you've just clearly indicated, well, primarily in my case, I'm in shock. I'm not interested in seeing it, because as far as I'm concerned, it was a non-event. I was trying to play it off as it didn't happen.
How is an astrophysicist not cognizant enough to recall that there were not camera phones before 4 years ago? That's insane.
Right. So within Chad and I went on to dinner and never spoke of it. Absolutely never spoke of it, nor had we any intentions of ever speaking about it. But we discovered the next day that others did report it. And so we heard it on the news, either on the radio or in the paper.
Oh, wow.
But others had reported it. So it made it an event that, as far as we were concerned, didn't happen. And we still chose to stay in denial about it.
And Alta has done a little bit of research in that Hannon area, and it has had quite a few reports of craft in the sky.
Since the 40s.
Yeah, I think there are just, a lot of locations like that they're hubs that a lot of people seem to see things throughout time in one particular area. One example is, and I know that you guys will get to it, but your experience in the French Quarter in New Orleans. When I was posting about you both coming on the show yesterday, I went online and I was looking at some of the French Quarter UFO sightings, and there's been a ton of them. And in fact, on Facebook, I posted a news. It must have been like Channel 6 News or something like that, of someone reporting a UFO in the French Quarter, and I think it was pretty close to where you guys were as well. So you seem to, you're on the road right now, you're traveling, and the audience might not know that, but you're traveling throughout the South, and you seem to constantly hit the hot spots. Just, I don't know if you're naturally drawn to them, or if it's if you wind up there on purpose for some reasons.
Exactly. We're not sure of any of these kinds of answers either. We're just living life and trying to follow. My intention has always been to try to find others. Since the event in '97, where Chad and I could no longer be asleep about any of this, because that changed everything in '97.
I want to talk about 97, but I do want to say very quickly, because it just hit me, that I think one of the things that makes your guys' story so compelling and so worthy of attention and honestly believable and credible is the fact that you're so committed to making sure that you say and state that you don't know the answers to anything. Like, you don't know. You do not. I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And your willingness to not exaggerate or fabricate or fill in gaps is something that I think is both admirable and worthy of acknowledgement, because that is to me what draws me to your story, and it just seems so real to me. And that,
we talk about that all the time on the show, Alta and Chad, how if we go and see people give talks, when someone's preaching the whole time saying this is how it is, and this is the way you should believe, and this is the answer, it's a big turnoff, and it's very distasteful, and there's so many different ways it could potentially be, or different answers that are out there. So it is refreshing, as Art says, to hear you talk about your experiences, and it's so kind of you to share them with the world, because a lot of people are afraid to do that. And the fact that you say that you don't know the answers, but this is what you are going through. So I would agree with Art there.
So before we get into 97 very quickly.
One of our favorite things is the more we learn, the more we don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. It's just,
it's just so big
for people to say this is the truth until they land in in whatever they come, or wherever, or whatever, until that happens, I don't believe anybody has the answer, and there might be more than one answer.
I think that's much closer to it than the previous statement. I think there's more than one answer, and I don't think that our physical bodies or brains can quite comprehend all of it. That's part of the point of us being here, is we're not supposed to comprehend it. That's how we're supposed to grow through it. But before we get into the 1997 stuff, how did the encounter in 95 end? I mean, was it just you guys looking at each other going, well, okay, right, great, and then moving on? Or was there a lot of discussion about it? And was it something that stuck with you in the months following?
Right. Yeah. It was like
we had no discussion about it.
We
never discussed it.
We heard the little thing on either the radio or newspaper.
The next day,
we were like, okay, we're not crazy, but that was it. We were never going to talk about it, and if that was the only event that ever happened to us, we probably would have never spoke about it.
No, we never would have spoke about it.
That's interesting, because I feel like if I were in that position, I would be talking about it for weeks and weeks afterwards. And the fact that you guys seem to consciously, or subconsciously rather, both repel away from it is in sort of a fear of discussing it, because who knows where this conversation might lead us. It's really interesting, and the fact that you took so long in your time together to actually get to starting to develop these conversations, and then now to where you're at, being on IRN and TruthFunders radio talking about it. That's just insane to me.
Right.
It's just
mind blowing.
Yeah, it's so mind blowing. Our brains exploded.
Another thing to add to this is years later in 2000, when I hooked back up with my father, I'm sitting and I'm telling my dad and my stepmother and a few other people that were around there, about this, what we had seen there in Hammond, because they had lived there before, so they knew the area. But my stepmother tells me, she says, I got to tell you something too. She says, your dad and I go down to Cancun for the millennium to, celebrate the new year, the new millennium. And they get down to the beach and they decide they're going to watch the fireworks at night. Well, the lights from the hotel was really interfering with the fireworks, so they decided to move up the cove a little bit where it was a little darker. So they get their chairs and they sit up, and they set their chairs up underneath or down below what they called the Temple of the Puma. They said they sit down, and as soon as they sit down, they hear this big cat scream. So that kind of freaks them out. They focus their attention back to the sky and watching the fireworks. And she said that as they were watching the fireworks, they could see this craft in the sky, and she said that it sounded described it exactly the way that I said. And
now, I'm wondering if there's anyone out there listening right now, if you've had an experience and you've seen what Chad and Alta have seen, go ahead and give us a call. And the number to call is 888-919-2355. If you have seen a similar craft in the sky, we'd love to hear about it.
Or if you just want to ask a question to either Alta or Chad, I mean, they're both personalities in their own right that are worthy of questions. 888-919-2355 is the telephone number. I want to take a quick pause because this seems like a great place to take a stop down and take a quick break, because we need to do that. When we get back, we're going to talk about 1997, and we're going to get into the blossoming of the high strangeness and what has led Chad and Alta here today. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio here on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb. I am joined by Mark Schwartz. He's the CEO and host. Chad and Alta will be having a TruthFunders campaign to discuss, and we'll probably touch on that towards the end of the program, but it won't be live until next week when they join us back on the show to do the second half of their appearance. 888-919-2355. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network, and we'll be this after back.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free. forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
And we're back. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network. A little bit of dead air there. But dead air is actually my favorite kind of air because it's the only type of thing on the radio that you actually listen intently to without any other thing distracting you. Anytime I hear dead air on the radio, I just go, whoa, I wonder what's going to happen. And I will sit there and listen until something does. You're listening to TruthFunders.
Did you know that there's also a program called Dead Air? At least there was for a long time, which was live Grateful Dead shows every Saturday night. Really,
of course,
really
you're such a
the night.
You know, we've never talked about the dead, but now that you just bring that up, I bet you're such a deadhead. Oh my God, we got to get into that later. No, I want to talk to Chad Alta. We only got about 30 minutes left. 888-919-2355, 888-919-2355. Chad and Alta Dillard are our guests here on TruthFunders Radio. And as we get into the last third of the show here, we're going to discuss about the events that happened in 1997, and that is New Orleans, correct?
Chad, Alta, are you there?
We are.
In 97 was the New Orleans event, yes?
Yes, it was. Right. 1997 is when, there's no doubt to either of us that, as I said, we no longer had the luxury of being asleep about anything happening in our lives.
This was the turning point. This was the awakening. This was the shift. This was the moment that everything changed.
Absolutely. So, Chad and I have moved into the heart of the quarter. I'm working in a very exclusive salon a couple blocks from where we live. The people that I work for they're a family-owned business. They've been in business since 1929, well-known worldwide kind of notoriety, if you will. And they have hired a young woman at this time named Jacqueline. And Jacqueline at the time is 24, never married, no children. Tall, slender, long blonde hair, very pretty, very straightforward, not a drama queen of any kind, and certainly not somebody who would make something up, storytelling kind of what have you. Chad is 30 at the time, and I have just turned 40. And again, Chad and I have never had children, so none of us have kids. Jacqueline and I, from the moment we first met, now, I'd like to also preface that from 95 until we moved to the French Quarter in 95. After we saw that first craft, it wasn't long after that, then Chad and I then moved to the French Quarter.
By the way, New Orleans is one of the most potent paranormal and overall weird energetic cities in the entire country, is it not? I mean, there's a lot going on in New Orleans in that regard.
A lot going on. And we had experienced a couple of years of, I call all the paranormal high strangeness, and basically always have. We're experiencing this in all forms, paranormal high strangeness for the 2 years prior to this 97 event. It seems like it's all amping up around Chad and I. And so Jacqueline is now a new hire, if you will. And from the moment her and I met, even though there was such an age difference between us, she was familiar. She felt familiar to me. And it was love at first sight for me. I just love her. And I felt that she felt the same way about me. And so one afternoon, Jacqueline had asked me if I wanted to go out that night and have drinks and dinner in the quarter, and I accepted. And I said, let's call Chad. He likes to play with the girls, and I knew he'd be joyous to come along too. So that's just what we did. And so, as I said, we're only a couple blocks from the shop. So Chad walked over and met us. Jacqueline had driven to work that morning and parked her car up the street from our shop, which happened to be on one end of the French Quarter. The quarter is about 23 blocks square. It's a 24/7 party. It never stops. It never goes to sleep. Yeah, it's like a little Vegas, I suspect, in many ways. And so the moment that we left the shop, it was probably around 9:30 p.m. We're walking, and we're just a couple blocks off of Bourbon Street, the famous Bourbon Street. So we decide we're going to go down Bourbon. Jacqueline leaves her car parked, and we're going to do this all on foot. We're just making a night of it, so we have no real plan. Again, the shortened version of this is each location that we stopped at, let me preface also that we all three immediately understood, or at least I remember it and Chad does, that the vibe of the quarter felt off. The energy felt off. And as I've tried to tell folks, you know your neighborhood. You're familiar with your neighborhood, the energy of your neighborhood, the rhythm, as Chad is saying. And, of course, on this night, it's not the same at all. It's not real overt in terms of anything we could see. It was the energy feel. And then as we started down Bourbon, we realized there were no people on the street. There were few scragglers, but where is everybody? And I remember saying that out loud. Where is everybody? This is weird. So it felt very Twilight Zone-y. Again, we stopped at 3 different locations across those blocks, and each time we stopped at a location, whether it was a restaurant or a bar or a combination of both, there was no people. There were no patrons, and there were no wait staff. There were no waitresses.
And this was in the afternoon? This wasn't in the middle of the night. This was like sometime during daylight hours when people would normally be at these locations.
Well, keep in mind, in the quarter, it never sleeps, so it's an all-night party. No, this started at 9:30 at night.
Okay, so this was at nighttime. Okay, so it's even creepier as a result of that.
It's fairly early, if you will, because things are just starting to happen in the quarter at midnight and 1 and 2 in the morning. So the point is there were just no people. At each location that we stopped at, there was one attendant, a bartender or a manager, but nobody else. So by the time we got to the end of the quarter, it's somewhere around 11-ish, between 11 and 11:30. We're out there. We've not had anything to drink because we didn't stay at any location. We spent a little bit of time at the first location because the guy that was the manager was a friend of ours. But we were so weirded out that we just kept moving. By the time we get to the end of the French Quarter, now it's, as I said, somewhere between 11 and 11:30. Please take note, we were not drinking. We did not use drugs, nor was there anybody around to drug us, which would have almost felt easier to comprehend. But there wasn't anybody, so we were not drugged.
It's as if the universe set it up so that you couldn't find an excuse somewhere, somehow.
Exactly. We had no excuses, and we have no excuses. What happened to us happened to us. Whatever that
Tell
is.
us what happened. It's killing me. I want to know what happened.
Okay, so we get to the end of the quarter, and we're standing on a street corner, the 3 of us, and I finally tell Chad, kind of privately, I just want to go home, like Dorothy and Oz. I just want to go home. I'm so bored. I just want to go home. I didn't even want to walk the blocks back. Yeah, we're over it. I asked Chad even to call us a cab, and that's the last thing the 3 of us remember collectively, was somewhere between 11 and 11:30 at night. I will kind of shorten that up, and then Chad will take over here. I am the only one that it appears was returned with memory of what I call the in-between experience. I have no memory of coming off that corner, and I have no memory of being returned home. But the next thing I know off of standing off that corner is it's the next day. I'm now sitting straight up in my living room on my day bed, my cross-legged, Indian style, like I do when I'm private, rubbing my arms, looking around my house with sunshine coming through my windows, losing my mind. I absolutely feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm terrified because where's Chad and where's Jacqueline? And oh my God, what happened to me is what's going on in my head.
Sure, you must have felt like maybe somehow you were drugged or taken advantage of, or things to see. So much would be running through anyone's head at that point in time, especially if you just, last thing you know, you're in the street, and then suddenly you wake up and you're just there by yourself. I mean, that's frightening.
It was terrifying, and also keep in mind that I have a very, as I say, acute memory of the in-between experience.
Right.
So, I'm happy to share all of that with you, but Chad has had regression since this has happened, and he has a full-blown account of his experience, and I'd like to say before I have him share that with you, please all keep in mind that in my memory, I'm not with Chad and Jacqueline. And in his regression, I'm not in his experience either. He thinks possibly he's with Jacqueline, but I'm nowhere in the picture. So however you'd like us to go from there, we're happy to share all that we can.
Yeah, well, I think we have limited time left.
I think it would be cool to hear. Yeah, we got about 15 minutes left. I think it would be kind of cool to hear a little bit of Chad's experiences in his regression, and then if we have time, get into a little bit of what the in-between was like, because chronologically that was the way things went. If not, we can just tease that for next week's show, because there's nothing like a good cliffhanger. If we could end it on a note like that, that'd be wonderful. So yeah, let's hear a little bit about Chad's experience and his regression and what has kind of come of the hypnosis and the time he has spent diving back into that. And by the way, Chad, another question I would have about that is, did you fear going into regression the first time that you did it, as to what you would find out as a result of doing that? Did you have a struggle with committing to do that, or did you want to do it, and were you excited to do it? How were you feeling going into it? And then kind of tell us about it.
Oh no, I was totally about it. I wanted to find out. I knew that something extraordinary happened to Alta and I. So I was very curious to find out what had happened.
And also, Chad went into regression. He seemed to respond to regression very easily. I've tried regression, and it's never worked for me. I've had high strangeness happen, but it certainly, Chad seems to be built for it, because he moved into it very easily.
So Chad, yeah, I'm gripping the seat of my chair right now, ready to hear your experience.
Okay. So yeah, I remember that night happening exactly like Alta just explained it. My last memory was 11:30. Now in my regression, 11:30. In my regression, I remember sitting there, kind of on the stoop, waiting, and I noticed this bright light coming from around the corner and through the glass where the storefront was. I get the girl's attention. We walk around the corner, and we see this orb. It's probably 12 foot in diameter. It's probably 15 foot off the ground, and it's probably about a half a block down the street. It's bright, white, just clean, crisp, beautiful light. We stand there maybe 30 seconds at the most, and this thing comes at us, and it just engulfs us. My next memory is I'm walking down this corridor. It's kind of gently turning to the right. There's this being in front of me, and he's got this big bulbous head. He's probably about 3 foot tall. He's got, his skin tone is kind of a pale gray skin, but he's not like the beings that you see on TV. He's not real thin. He's kind of dwarfish. And
it's really interesting. Whitley Strieber has mentioned short blue beings before. I don't know if you've ever heard him mention that or had the chance to talk to him about it, but that's the second time I've heard that before. It's I've heard Whitley describe that, and I've heard you describe that. It'd be really interesting to hear you guys kind of talk about it together.
Yeah. Now this being was not my blue being. He was kind of a pale gray. Now, I only saw him from behind. He was wearing a black one-piece jumpsuit. Now, I have heard Whitley just this last few months on this. So, anyway, peripherally I could see a tall blonde female beside me walking to my left. This describes our friend Jacqueline, but I didn't turn to look to see if it was. My next memory is I'm in this huge room. It just seemed infinite. It was pretty much totally black. Off to my left, I could see a tall blonde female laying on an examining table. She was nude, but she was censored from head to toe. I couldn't tell who it was. I didn't see body parts or anything like that. There were 3 beings around her, one at each side and one at her head. These beings they were probably 8-9 foot tall. They were very buggish, big eyes, mouths close to their chin, almost like a praying mantis. Their arms were kind of crooked. They were wearing these cloaks, almost like a Jesuit priest or a Grim Reaper without the hood. She never seemed to be in distress or even conscious. I focused my attention back to my immediate. Now I'm sitting in this chair almost like a dentist chair, but more comfortable. During my experience, I'm never nervous. I'm never scared. I'm never hurt. This was totally, a positive experience for me. So I turned and I focused my attention to my immediate. I look over to my right, and there's my little blue being. And he's probably about 3 foot tall. Very thin, like the grays that you see on TV, almond-shaped eyes, bulbous head, little slit for the mouth. In his presence, his aura was that of like a professor / shaman / scientist / healer, just all together. He was just beautiful. And, his blueness was just this bright, vibrant blue, just lively blue. He goes over and he picks up this box, and he has the box in his right hand. He takes his left hand and puts it into the side of the box. When he pulls his hand out, there's this substance. It's probably maybe the size of a quarter. It's kind of round, but it's kind of undulating and, moving around. It's blue, just like him.
So Chad, real quickly, is his skin blue? Is he glowing blue? Are his eyes blue? Is it all blue, or what part of him was? I'm just curious.
His skin is blue. Now his eyes are black.
Okay.
Just solid black. But his skin is blue. He's just this vibrant blue.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just I'm interested.
Great question. He when he pulls his hand out, he has this substance, and there's little kind of metal flakes or kind of glittery kind of stuff in it. It's blue, just like same color as he is. He sits the box down, apparently, because I really don't even remember him sitting the box down. Takes his hand. He's only got 4 digits, So he's got two fingers up, almost like in a peace symbol. I'm just saints or Jesus or Buddha. You know, his two outer fingers folded in and the two middle fingers up. And when he does this, this substance starts spinning. Now, it's free-floating above his hand. And this stuff starts spinning. And the faster it spins, the blueness and the sparkly stuff kind of dissipate out of it and kind of rotating around it. It starts slowing down, and it had turned into this double-pointed pyramid crystal. And it's just very clear. And I remember thinking to him, you know, telepathically, I guess, you know, why are you showing this to me? You know, this is something very important. You know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. You know, why are you showing this to me? And he told me that I will know in time, or when it's time. My next memory is I'm in this other room, two walls that are very straight, and one that's kind of concave. Now, there's this overstuffed black leather chair in the middle of the room. And I remember thinking to myself how out of place it is, and, you know, it looks comfortable, but it's not. The walls are very, the walls like in the hallway and the walls in this room are, you know, kind of a gray metallic, no bolts, no rivets, no seams. You know, it just seems smelted together. Now, I focused my attention to the wall that's kind of concave.
Hey, Chad, by the way, we only have about 5 minutes left, so just keep that in mind.
Okay, well, I'll speed it up real quick.
Yeah, and we can also save, you know, get it to a point to where we can save it and continue next week, because this is just crucial, really amazing stuff.
Yeah, well, it's almost over, so I focused my attention to this wall that's kind of concave, and what I thought was a solid gray metallic wall, I could see through it. And I could see stars and planets, and, you know, it's like I'm out in the galaxy somewhere. And I'm sitting there in awe, and all of a sudden this little craft right outside the wall speeds past, and it gets about 10, 15 feet away. It stops, and it comes back almost like it's doing a double take. It's sitting there floating right outside the wall, and it's football-shaped. It's about 3 foot long, 2 foot wide, little metal antennas and blinky lights and everything. I could feel intelligence coming out of it. It sat there for about 30, 45 seconds and shot off again. And then my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning.
Wow, what a phenomenal story. It's really quickly, like I said, we don't have a lot of time, but when you say you could feel intelligence coming off of it, what did you mean by that? Because I think that's an interesting way to phrase it.
You know, it's funny because it's almost like it did a double take, like, look at the little monkey in the cage, Mom. You know, it was very... It was
curious, you know, in a weird way. Like, curious. It was, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it was almost as in shock to see me as I was it.
That's so wild. Wild.
There's still so much left to the story. There is Alta's experience. There is Jacqueline's experience that we're going to hear. We're going to hear that next week on the show. And we're also, if you guys are open to it, Alta and Chad, I would like to potentially hear your thoughts and your analysis on this, because on a lot of shows, I know that you've shared the experience, and we thank you very much for coming on today and sharing it. But I would love to hear your thoughts and your you know, what you feel it means, and I know it's probably just more questions than answers.
Yeah, I don't think 3 minutes is going to cover that.
No, definitely not. So I'd like to save that all for next week. But just to for our listeners, you know, we'll try to cover some of that stuff if you're okay with that and comfortable with it, because it's just there's so much here. And one other thing I want to say is that Alta and Chad reached out to TruthFunders, and why they're on the show today is to not only share their story, but yes, to actually share their story. They would like to, as you can see, there's so much going on here, and they would like to put it down in book form and get it out there so that
permanent basis, yeah,
on a permanent basis, because a story like this is a story that needs to stay alive and live on, even past our own lives, and be spread. There will be other people that may have experienced things like this. This is, not a lot of people come out there with their experience stories.
Hey, Mark, your stream is breaking up, just so you know, so I'm going to jump in here. But yeah, like Mark is saying, it is a very worthwhile and valuable story that does demand almost being shared as time goes on. And let's face it, as much as Alta and Chad might like to, or maybe not like to, I don't know, they're not going to be here forever to talk about the story with us, and it does need to live on past when they leave us. So TruthFunders.com will be launching a project with them next week. It'll go live, I think Mark said, on Wednesday, I believe. And they're going to be writing a book. They want to put a book out, and you'll be able to donate to their campaign starting next week on TruthFunders.com. We're getting super tight on time. I want to thank you guys both so much for coming on the show with us, and we cannot wait to get back into it with you next week. I need to write down a couple things so I remember where we're at here, and we'll get just knee-deep right back into it. And I think next week we should just jump right into the show just to make sure that we have enough time to get it all in there and then talk about your project. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network. I want to leave you guys with this question because I think it's a great question that was posed by a listener in the chat room, Neutron, and we'll address this right out the gate next week. As soon as we jump into the show, I'll have you guys answer this question, but it is a very good question, and I really want to know the answer, and I'm bummed that I can't get it from you now because it's kind of eating at me because I think it's actually a phenomenal question. Have the two of you ever had an encounter together, but where both of you saw different things than the other? So you guys experienced an encounter, but your perception and your overall experience with it was completely separate. And it seems like that's kind of what happened with the New Orleans event, and we're going to get into that immediately into the show next week. We got about 60 seconds left. Mark, if there's anything you want to say, do it now and do it quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say, go to www.truthfunders.com to learn more and see all the wonderful projects that are up there. I want to thank Chad and Alta. Thank you both so much for coming on. Would you like to say any last words before we go and pick it up next week?
Just how much of an honor it is to be with you guys. You guys are, doing a great service to many people, and
you made us both cry. We're just so grateful.
Okay, leave it at that. Leave it at that. Next week we'll get into that. I want to know what made you cry as soon as we do in the show next week. Okay. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network. My name is Art Webb for Mark Schwartz. We will see you then. Bye-bye. Thank you.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.